from either the PNP or the JLP. And when one party comes to power, what do? They send their best gunmen them away so that they can be protected because they don't want them to get killed. So they go to Canada, America, Britain. They come and settle. Now these are gunmen from the ghettos of Jamaica, Kingston. They don't have no academic qualifications. So what are they going to do? Work? Tell me a gunman, man, what happened to you? So they penetrate the underground and they begin to take over the underground because they're killers, and most of them are organized. They don't have to come over in a posse. Come over in 5 and 6, 3 or 4. But if you're a killer, you're a killer. And if you're a killer, good luck to you. You can gain ground quite easily on the underground. And that's how the landscape of Britain changed, the landscape of Canada changed, the landscape of the US changed. Not because of Jamaican yardies, but because of violence in the urban centers at a certain time, which was galvanized by politics, by social conditions, and the phenomenon at the time of crack cocaine. Crack cocaine threw a life raft to many in the black community. You look at them black American record labels and ask where they get their money from. You look around black Britain and ask where do some of them cats get their foundation from? Or Canada. Because at the time of the 80s, Margaret Thatcher, the workers were the workers, the working class were the working class. Our parents arrived over here as blue-collar workers to work in factories. And we would have taken up that generation of factory workers. I might not be standing here to you mouthing off. I might have been talking about, boy, I have to get my overtime at Alcan, you know. Because we were destined to be factory workers, blue-collar workers. If you were African, you were the middle class. Because when you Africans came over to Britain, you didn't come over as workers from the Caribbean. You came over as the African middle class to become doctors, a lawyer. But we are still workers. And that's why if you look at the landscape of Britain and seeing how the Asians have progressed as a trading class from those who were expelled from Uganda by Idi Amin, they become traders. The Africans become the black middle class. Still lawyers, still doctors. But even as Africans, you are still workers. So we don't employ. So we have still the same catch-22 situation, whereby our youth have no employment because we are not employers. The Asians can take care of themselves through business, commerce, trade. Look at the scenario and look at the level of violence as I'm talking to you about in the US, in Britain. Crack cocaine, not that I'm endorsing it, but I'm saying crack cocaine and drugs opened up the landscape and leveled the playing field literally. Not that I'm endorsing it, I'm just saying what it is. Because Thatcher and Reagan in the 80s, when the worker was the worker and we were working in the factories, the white boys were working in their factories too. In those days, I remember, underground crime, if you're doing anything, it's blagging. You rob a bank or a post office. And in them days, you never had too many arms. You only have a double B, a sawn-off. If you have something, you have a German Ruger, a weapon from the Second World War. That was what it was, the underground. And the white people, the white boys, did the same thing. So the workers were the workers. Then Thatcher and Reagan fired the starter pistol and said, you're off. No longer do you have to work in factories. Just make it anyhow. Get out, go, make your fortune. And you began with your file of facts, your red Porsche, your black, your red and white Habitat furniture, and you're on the race to becoming somebody. You give up your job in your factory and try and become a financial advisor or something where you're wearing a suit. And everyone's trying to race to make some money. Because pre that era, if you look at it for what it was, family was family, community was community, and society was society. All of these factors, these three main factors of society, were deconstructed, were atomized when that gun was fired. So no longer were you valued because you were the best son, the quiet one, the one who did well at school. You are now valued upon what you have in the bank. That determines how good you are. What shoes you're wearing, what car you're driving. And we black people and working class white people, we've always been in the race. I remember a cat that I was moving with when I was growing up as a youth in Stonebridge, our little firm. The guy who was running things at the time, he bought himself a brand new Golf. It was like, boy, because no, the black man's running this thing here right now. New one, GTI, 1985. Then, in 1987, they brought out the BMW convertible. And I remember walking into BMW Holland Park with cash, 27 grand, cash, round the waist. And a black cat says, what are you having? I said, oh, we have this one here, a ratio. His name was. And he was just having a black guy in the showroom. I said, and he wasn't taking us seriously. You're going to buy this in the yeah, right. He said, are you going to pay for cash? That was the day. Everyone was on the race. And so you're valued by the car you drive. So everyone's chasing the race and buying a BM this and a Merc that and rah rah rah. Why do we as poor people do this? Need to express our wealth in materials. Because we suffer from low self-esteem. That low self-esteem materializes itself in materials to make you show. Do you remember back in the 80s? I mean, at the time it didn't seem so camp and so quiche. But do you remember back in the 80s? And you had these thick black gold rope chains. Zoop, zoop. And you had Mr. T. I mean, think about it now. Look how tacky it looks. But if you were the dud, you were your big. I remember having a 10-ounce chop. Because part of the thrill is being able to defend it. And wearing your gold. Because you attach your self-esteem to materials. So you will find, even now, if you go to the poor communities, I remember being in Colombia or in Jamaica. You go to the ghettos on a Friday and Saturday night and don't see if you see the nicest shoes come out. The nicest clothes. I mean, I remember growing up as a youth again in this country where people say, oh, you know, it was only after Thatcher. The materialism, the sense of low self-esteem has always been there in terms of needing to validate yourself. Because during the 70s and the 80s, what was the guys them walking around talking? Why, me, I wear my crocs, you know. Watch them. And if you're something, you have the soft alligator. And if you're a dud, what am I talking about? Watch the ostrich. Ostrich shoes, man, them paying £400 and £500 for a pair. In them times you could have buy a car for £500. A man's walking around in a BMW 3 Series on his foot. That was materialism. And I still say today, we're still afflicted by the very same disease. And this is not a black thing. We want to consume, to consume, to consume. So everything now is celebrity. Everything's based upon celebrity. Everything's still based upon that lowest common denominator of low self-esteem. Wanting to be recognized. Wanting some sense of validation. Some sense of acknowledgement that I exist. So you want to be on TV. You want to be that celebrity. You want to be that footballer. You want to be the musician. You go into most of these poor communities nowadays and ask these children, both black and white, what do they want to be when they grow up? And they'll tell you a footballer. Or they'll tell you a musician. Why do they choose these two professions?